Hey everyone, this is Adrian from Live to Learn Academy, and this is lesson 1.2 of the grade 12 Nelson Advanced Functions textbook. If you are somebody who is looking for tutoring and would want extra help, feel free to click the link in our bio where you can get access to our website, and on that website you can speak with one of us on our team, and we'd love to get you set up with some tutoring. But without further ado, let's get straight into the lesson. So chapter 1.2, guys, is talking about absolute value functions, right? So what is an absolute value function? So let's start off by identifying what this thing actually looks like. Okay, so an absolute value function, and for some of you guys this may be a little bit of review from grade 11, but an absolute value function looks like this. So you want to recognize it by being V-shaped, okay? And how you're going to notice this is it's a V-shaped function, that's one, but two, it looks like a linear function on both sides of the y-axis. So if you look over here, from when when x, so let's say function, it's going to be x when x is greater than 0, and it's going to be negative x when x is less than 0. Right, so this is what the function of the absolute value looks like. So if you look at this, on this side, it's negative x, and on this side, it's positive x. And when I'm talking about this negative x, I'm talking about the slope of the line. That's negative x, and the slope of the line, that's positive x. Right? So this is just visually how you can identify what an absolute value function is. Now this is obviously graphically. Algebraically, an absolute value function would look like this. You would see these two bars. Now these two bars represent the absolute value. So what does that mean? Absolute value functions essentially means that any number that's within these bars, whether it's negative 5, negative 10, I don't know, negative 100, they automatically become positive numbers. So you can think of the bars as like a generator. Once you put any number within those two bars, it automatically becomes positive. So this is the first characteristic. All absolute value bars make every number positive. This is one of the key concepts of absolute value. Once you're in these bars, it automatically makes the number positive. Now, here's the thing. You're going to get different types of questions with absolute value. Sometimes they'll give you a list of numbers and they'll say, okay, I want you to rearrange these from greatest to least. So an example of that kind of question would look like this. Let's say you had negative 5, 20, negative 15, 12, negative 25. Okay? So let's say we had these 5 numbers, and they'll say arrange it from greatest to least. So the way we would do that is we'd look at these numbers and we'd say, okay, negative 5 is just going to be 5. 20 is already positive, so it's just going to be 20. Negative 15 is going to be positive 15. 12 is going to be 12, and then negative 25 is going to be positive 25. Now that I got all these numbers from the absolute value, now I'm just going to arrange them from greatest to least. So 25, 20, 15, 12, 5. And then this right here will be your answer. So this is the first type of question, and this is honestly very, very simple. It's very easy. All you need to know is once these bars are surrounding the number, that just automatically makes the number positive. And once they're positive, now you're just rearranging it from greatest to least. You guys know how to do that. From grade 1, you already know how to do that. So That's the first type of question you're going to get. The second type of thing you need to know about absolute value functions is the domain and range of these functions. So when you have an absolute value function, let's say I have the absolute value function, and let's say it looks like this. The domain is always going to be x is an element of the real. This is always the case for absolute value functions. So you don't have to think about anything. It's automatically x is an element of the real. But the range is where things change. The range is where that point is. So let's say this is at 1. The range is y is an element of the real where y is greater than or equal to 1. So this it changes. It changes depending on where the we can call it the midpoint is. So this is that midpoint, right? From where the V is, or the mountain peak or the valley, wherever that is within the absolute function, this is where the range is going to change. So if you look at this, in this case, because it's a happy face, right? Because it's a smiley face, we know that the V is opening upwards, therefore y is everything above that 1. But in another case, what if you had a function like this, where the absolute value function was flipped? Then, and let's say that this was at 4, we would say y is an element of the real where y is less than or equal to 4. Pretty straightforward. So if it's a happy face, you're going to be greater than or equal to that bottom. If you're a sad face, you're going to be less than or equal to the top. But as you know, depending on whatever it is, in absolute value functions, x is an element of the real always. So the domain never changes. So that's something that you always want to make sure of, that you're aware of. Okay. Now we're going to get into a different type of question. Okay. So there are different types of questions that they're going to ask. The first one we already went through, example 1, organizing from greatest to least. That's pretty straightforward. The second type of question we're going to get is express using so I'll just write it here. Express using absolute value notation. Okay, so expressing this using absolute value notation. So let's say you have something like this. X is less than -3, or x is greater than 3. So we want to express, they're going to give us some kind of inequality, okay? And we want to put this in absolute value notation. So the way we're going to do that is, if you look at this on a number line, for example, x is greater than 3. So from 3 onwards, it's going to exist. I'll put it in red. And from -3 onwards, it's also going to exist. So how can this is where it gets a little tricky. You got to kind of understand how to express this kind of situation in an absolute value inequality. So what you're going to write is the absolute value of x has to be greater than 3. And I'll tell you why, right? Why this makes sense. So if you take any number from here, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or -3, -4, -5, -6, -8, and you plug that number into here, it's always going to satisfy this inequality. So we are trying to find a number that we can put in here that's going to satisfy. We're trying to find an equation so that any number reflected in our number line will satisfy this inequality. So for example, if I put -7, is that greater than 3? Yes, it is, because 7 is greater than 3. Therefore, this works. What if I put a number like 10? Is that greater than 3? Yes. 10 is greater than 3. Therefore, this works. So the question is, yeah, we understand how this stuff works, right? We understand how this stuff works. And we understand how we can draw the number line from the question that they gave. So the real purpose of these types of questions is, how do we get this? So this is where you're trying to use your brain to figure out what is that inequality statement that's going to satisfy this condition, right? You want this equation to satisfy the inequality that they gave you in the question. So let's look at another example. So these ones are a little tricky, right? So this is where you got to actually practice and do a bunch of examples. So let's look at another example. So x is less than or equal to -1, or x is greater than or equal to 1. So first, what I like to do is I first put this in a number line. So I know -1 is here, 1 is here, and it's going to be everything greater than 1 and everything less than -1. I'm just satisfying these conditions and kind of reflecting it in a number line. And the only reason I'm putting in a number line, guys, is because I'm a visual learner and I want to kind of visualize how this stuff is working. If you can do this in your head, you don't need to draw the number line necessarily, but I like to draw the number line just so I can visualize it. Now, once I have this all set up, what I'm now going to do is I'm going to figure out the inequality for this. So I know that this number has to be greater than 1. Because any number I put here, -2, -3, -4, it'll automatically be greater than 1 because it'll become positive. And any number here will automatically be greater than 1 because it will already be positive. So you see, example 2 and 3 are very similar. Now, the only difference that I want to make sure that you understand as well, this is another thing. Over here, these less than or equal to and these greater than or equal to signs, if this is just less than or greater than, this is going to be an open circle. And this is going to be an open circle, okay, on your number line. But if you look at it, when you have a greater than or equal to sign, it's going to be a closed circle. Closed circle. Okay, so that's something I'm going to write over here. So greater than or less than, you'll have open circles. And greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, you'll have closed circles. Okay, these are little things that you got to be aware of. So let's look at another example. Example 3. So if you look at this, this is a little different. If you look over here, for these two questions, it was everything greater than 3 or everything less than -3. Or for this question, it was everything greater than 1 or everything less than -1. This question is saying something completely different. This is saying everything between -8 and 8. So if we were to draw a number line of this, I'll have -8, I'll have 8. I'll also know that they're closed circles. And it's going to be all the numbers within here. So before it was on the ends, what's numbers on the right, what's on the left. Now it's what are the numbers that are in between. So I got to create an inequality that's going to satisfy this. So I know right away, all these numbers that are within here, they're all less than 8, right? Because we have -7, -6, whatever, -5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all the way to 0. And then we're going to have 1, 2, 3, all the way to 8. So all these numbers are literally less than 8. So the absolute value of this is going to be less than or equal to 8. So for example, if I plug in -7, is that less than or equal to 8? It is, because negative 7 turns into 7, which is less than 8. Or what if I put 6? The absolute value of 6, is that less than 8? Less than or equal to 8? Yes, because 6 just turns into 6 because it's already positive, and it's less than or equal to 8. So these conditions are all being satisfied, and you want to test these out with each of these points to see if it satisfies. And notice this, because it includes these points, notice how my inequality also includes that. Right? That's something to take into consideration. So this is a specific type of question, guys. They're going to give you these inequalities, and they're going to tell you, okay, make it into absolute value notation. So that's the answer, and then this is the answer. Everything else is me just checking if it's the answer or not. And the second thing you want to consider is the notation. Open circles versus closed circles. Okay? So this is a specific type of question that they're going to ask you in this type of lesson. Let's go on to the the next type of question. So remember, the first type we had was what? The first type we had was find the absolute value and arrange them from greatest to least. So what we did over here. That was the first type of question. The second type of question, domain and range. The third type of question is express using absolute value notation the inequality. Okay, so we did a couple examples here. Let's go to the next type of question. So the next type of question is graph the inequality on a number line, which is kind of what we already did in the previous type of question, but they might just ask you straight up graph the inequality on the number line. So I'll show you an example of this. They might give you a question like the absolute value of x is less than 8. They'll give you the actual inequality, and they'll tell you, okay, put this thing on a number line. So most people will just draw a number line, and they'll put 8, and then less than, so it's a circle, and they'll say all the numbers greater than 8. Oh, sorry, all the numbers less than 8. But this isn't actually right. This makes sense if the equation was x is less than 8. But the equation doesn't say x is less than 8. It says the absolute value of x is less than 8. That means something entirely different. That means that it's going to include all the numbers from 8 to negative 8. So instead, the equation is going to look like this. The number line is going to look like this. Because every number that I put in, if I put in negative 8, if I put in negative 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it's going to look like this. And this makes sense because remember absolute value less than 8, that's actually what we got over here. But this one was less than 8, not less than or equal to 8. So it's very similar. Okay, let's look at another example. Example 2. Example 2, it says absolute value of x is greater than or equal to 16. Okay, so it says greater than or equal to 16. So automatically I know, like you can do it for the positive first. So you can say 16 and greater than or equal to. So we know it's going to be everything after 16. But that only includes the positive numbers. What about the negative side? Let's say I plugged in negative 17 into here. Negative 17 is 17, which is greater than or equal to 16. So that means negative 17 is a point that we could use on this graph. So that means that from negative 16 onwards, it also exists. Does that make sense? So now we have it on the ends. So this is something that you got to get practice with. You have to practice doing these questions, and you got to use test values every once in a while to just verify that what you're doing is right. Okay? So the first type of problem, remember I said we have to express the, we have the inequality and we're using a number line to express this inequality as an answer. Now, for this one, we're just taking this and we're putting it into a number line. The other type is they'll actually give you the number line. Okay, so they'll actually give you the number line. So this one, in my opinion, is actually a bit easier, but let's look at this. They might give you a number line that goes from, let's say, -3 to 3. I'll put it in red so you guys can see a bit better. -3 to 3. Okay, so right away, we have to now get the inequality based off this. So here, I know it's going to be x is less than or equal to 3, because all the numbers in between are going to satisfy this inequality, right? So I feel like this is getting a little redundant right now, but you guys get the point. At the end of the day, there are different things you're going to need to know. The first thing, so this is the recap. Number 1, converting these numbers into the actual number, right? So converting it, if it's a negative, it automatically becomes positive. So everything becomes positive. The second thing is actually they give you the inequality and they want you to give me the absolute value inequality. The third thing is they give you the actual, they give you the absolute value inequality and they want you to put it in a number line. Okay? The fourth thing, they can give you the number line and they want you to give me the inequality. So you see how all of these are just different variations of the same question. Different variations of the same question. So this is the absolute value lesson. It's not hard. And by the way, the last one, I forgot to mention. The last one is the domain and range. If you can find out exactly how to do each of these variations of questions, you will be completely fine for this lesson. So if you guys found this helpful, drop a thumbs up, share it to some of your friends, share it to people who are taking the course with you, or save this video for later. And if you are somebody that needs extra help, you need that tutoring to just get your mark up to the next level as you apply to universities, feel free to look at the video description. Look in the video description. We have a link to our online tutoring service. Feel free to fill out the form, and we'd love to hop on a call with you guys and get your grade up. So without further ado, click the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.